Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our session that's talk about college athletes. We have Dane from California Lutheran University who's gonna talk to you about the top 10 things you should know about becoming a student athlete. And then you know that I myself played basketball back in the days, so I was a student athlete. So I'm happy to have you here today and share some of your experience working with student athletes. So go ahead.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, and glad to be here with you during the fair and give you some presentation tips or the top 10 things to know about becoming a student athlete in the US. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so you can see the slides that I've got. First, I want to say, I come from a university that is a Division III in the NCAA, and that does inform my perspective, the experience that I've had with students over the years. But I've also worked really closely with students who have looked at D1 and D2, and so I want to give you some general tips that'll hopefully help in this college search process. This is a big topic. We could spend a couple hours just talking about the basics. I have only got about 20 minutes, so I'll kind of rush through it. If you do have additional questions, happy to chat with you. And of course, your counselors here through UStudy and Apply Wave are able to help you out even more. So some things that I'll talk about: how competitive am I, NAIA versus NCAA, options for even the 2+2 option for athletes, academic requirements, some tips for communicating, and then finding some balance and some tips for next steps. So one of the first questions that I think is really important as a prospective student athlete is to really ask yourself, why? Why do you want to participate in intercollegiate athletics? What is the source of that? For a lot of students, it might be financial. You have in your mind that you might be going for that athletic scholarship. My hope is that the answers might be a little bit deeper than that as well. Your love, your passion for competition, your desire to stay fit and active while you're studying your academic degree. Athletics can definitely be a really important part of the overall college search process. As a counselor, though, I would encourage you not to have athletics be the only part of your university search process. So why compete? Thinking about your goals, certainly the options to develop leadership connections. You might meet future business partners or lab research partners through the athletic teams that you participate in. Hopefully you love your sport. You haven't played so much in your secondary years that you're burnt out, but hopefully you'll keep going. There may be some financial benefits depending on the type of institution and your level of competitiveness, and maybe even future aspirations. A lot of Olympic athletes are Division I, II, and sometimes Division III athletes, but certainly a lot of Division I and Division II athletes go on to compete at a higher level as well. The second thing is, what are your options? Well, you have a lot of options. If you're not looking to actually have a high level of competition, but you just want to keep up with the sport and have some fun, there's intramural sports at university campuses where you can join with your classmates, roommates, maybe even faculty, and be in a basketball league or an indoor soccer league. At one point, we even had an inner tube water polo league for intramural sports where you're floating around in a tube playing water polo. Those are not a very high competitive level, but a way to stay engaged in those sports. Many universities have club sports, so they're not necessarily at the level of intercollegiate athletics, but they might be competing in sports that are a little bit less common. Like, in California, it's sunny, we don't have a lot of snow, but we do have a hockey club team. Rugby is typically a club sport instead of an NCAA sport. So still some competition, but not the same level. And then we'll talk about the NAIA, which you may not have heard of. I'm sure most of you have probably heard of NCAA. We'll talk about that as well. And then there's the National Junior College Athletic Association, which provides that route for 2+2, do 2 years at a junior college as an athlete and then transfer to a university for 2 more years. So we'll talk about that very briefly as well. But first, a quick overview of the NCAA. So there's Division I, Division II, Division III. There are actually a lot of Division III institutions. There's actually 443 universities and colleges in the US that are Division III, a little bit more actually than there are in Division I. But there's a lot of student athletes out there, over 430,000 student athletes participating in the NCAA in the US. And here are some of the sports that are offered in the NCAA. There's a lot of fall sports, the winter sports that cross over between the fall and the spring semester, and then of course the spring sports. and some emerging sports that are starting to gain some traction, things like rugby, equestrian, triathlon. There's some sports in other countries that you're not going to see here. We don't have competitive table tennis quite as much. We don't have badminton. We may not have some of the other sports that might be played in other countries, but again, rugby is definitely coming up as well. Number 3, what is NAIA? This is an area that students are not quite as familiar with, but is a great option for students that are looking for athletic scholarships. So the NAIA is the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. There's about 65,000 student athletes at NAIA schools. 250 colleges and universities in the US are part of the NAIA, and they're giving scholarships. There's not Division 1, 2, or 3 within the NAIA. They tend to be small to medium-sized universities and colleges throughout the country, not just in the Midwest, but throughout the US. And they do offer scholarships for men's and women's sports. So that is definitely an option for you. And here's some information about NAIA. You can register to playnaia.org and connect, find out which universities are part of this athletic system, and also check out coaches, potential scholarships, search for universities that might be the right fit. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the NCAA Division 1. Division 1 schools provide athletic scholarships in some cases, not all. Just because you're playing at a Division 1 school doesn't mean you'll automatically get an athletic scholarship, but it is a higher level of competition. Those teams that you see competing on US TV channels and cable channels are Division 1 schools in most cases, but they do offer scholarships. Also, Division 2 gives scholarships as well. So I'm going to talk about those kind of as a group because there are a lot of similarities. They're highly competitive. There's a wide range of educational options, whether it's small or large, public or private universities, religious universities, secular universities, both comprehensive and research universities, as well as some liberal arts colleges. The reason why I say that is don't let the athletic connection limit the range of options that you have with academic programs. If you know that a smaller university is a better fit for you, but you still want to play Division 1 or Division 2, that's okay. There's some small universities that have some great athletic programs. So think about the athletic search as part of many different elements of your university search option. There are some limits in Division 1 and Division 2 for when you can have communication with your coach, and there's some eligibility requirements that we'll talk about. It's important to know that the scholarships may be available to cover all or part of your costs. But again, it may not cover as much as you might think, depending on how competitive you are as well. So Division 1 and Division 2, there is a process you go through. There's something called the eligibilitycenter.org. You have to provide some personal information. There is a minimum GPA, or US equivalent GPA, to be able to compete at the D1 level, 2.3 or 2.2 for D1. They usually would require SAT or ACT scores that are somewhere in sync with your GPA, although the NCAA has announced that they'll continue to be flexible with the SAT up through 2023 because of COVID. So that's some good news that you may not have to take that SAT or ACT. You also have to pay a certification fee to be able to register your account to even start the process with Division 1 or Division 2. And then number 6, you have to demonstrate amateur status. You might wonder, what does that mean? Basically, for Division 1 and Division 2, you have to show that you're not a paid athlete at a professional level before you go to university. So if you're playing for a brilliantly competitive soccer club in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and you're getting paid for that, you may not be able to jump right into Division 1 or Division 2. You have to show that you're not getting paid. If you are getting paid, maybe it's just for travel costs. But if you're actually earning money through endorsements or other things, that may limit your ability to be a Division 1 or Division 2 athlete. They're looking for amateur, not professional athletes. So some really important key elements there. Then there's Division 3. Division 3 is a little bit different. There are still a wide range of universities, mostly small and medium-sized universities, public and private. And it covers across the United States. As I mentioned, my university, Cal Lutheran, is a Division 3 school. There are very few limits on when you can contact a coach or have a conversation about playing at a Division 3 school. Because there are not scholarships, there are not as many rules and regulations around eligibility for Division 3. So there's definitely some benefits of being in Division 3. There is definitely a balance of being a student and an athlete. Competition is considered as one of many aspects as part of the admission process. If for some reason you want to maybe stop playing your sport for a semester or a year to study abroad or do a co-op program or an internship, the good thing about Division III is you won't lose a scholarship if you stop playing your sport, because there are no athletic scholarships. So there's some benefits there. College attendance, scholarships, retention are not tied to athletics. So, one benefit, if you're playing a sport and maybe the coach leaves and you don't like the new coach, you don't want to play anymore, you don't have to worry about losing that scholarship. Division III schools are quite generous with academic scholarships, so you may still have some scholarships available, just not on the athletic side. Another benefit to Division III, and I've seen this a lot with international students that are really strong athletes, they get more playing time and have a little bit more notoriety because they're able to play at a high competitive level, Division III, even if they might have been eligible to play at a D3 or a D2 or a D1 level. All right, so some tips about timeline. There's a lot of information in the next few slides, so stick with me, and you can reach out to me in the fair, and I'd be happy to share these also with my partners here as part of this fair, so you can understand. One thing to note is there are academic requirements to graduate from high school to be able to compete in Division I and Division II. You have to have natural science, math, social science. In most high school systems around the world, though, most students graduating from the national curriculum will meet these requirements. But in terms of the timeline, it's really important to plan ahead. If you're in grade 9 or grade 10, that's really the right time to really start to look at Division I and Division II schools, because there are some things that you can do as early as grade 10. You can fill out your profile in the eligibility center and actually start to work out that process where you're being certified as an amateur athlete. You're looking at what academic options you have. And then starting in grade 11, you can start to make that short list of schools. By the end of the year, you might actually be able to start having more communication with coaches, maybe even start taking a tour and start having a little bit more direct contact with those coaches. Coaches might have started looking at you earlier, but they may not be able to talk to you until a little bit later on. And the next step actually is communication with coaches. This is going to look really confusing. There's actually a lot of great resources. If you go to NCAA and just search Division I and Division II, you'll find all this information. None of this is secret. It's all available to you. One of the things you'll note, though, is that for Division I, different sports have different timelines for when you can talk to coaches. So when can you have a phone call from a coach? Well, that's between your 10th and 11th grade year, for example. When can you have an official visit to the university? Well, not until August 1st at the start of grade 11. So all these different sports have different requirements. But for the rest of the sports, Division II and Division III, here are some tips on when you can talk to coaches. Similar for Division II. Division III, you'll note that really you can have a lot of contact with coaches really early on in your high school experience. So the important thing here, even if you don't remember all this information, I know I'm going through this fast, but it's important just to note you got to plan ahead. Find a counselor that you trust, talk to them about your aspirations to be an athlete, and start to plan early. One of the important questions that you want to ask yourself as well, in addition to why do I want to compete in athletics, is, am I competitive? It's a really tough question because sometimes we either underestimate our actual abilities and sometimes we overestimate our abilities. But it's important to start to do some research. Look at the universities that you're applying to, or maybe even look at a sampling of Division I or Division II universities in your sport. Watch some of the video footage. Look at some of the stats. If it's a team sport, look at how the team is working. Look at individual stats. If you're a point guard, research that D2 school and see how that point guard is performing. What's their shooting average? What are their assists? And figure out if you're kind of at that level. Now, if you're a single sport athlete or an individual athlete like tennis or golf, you can find out a little bit more stats. Or swimming, you can look at the times that university champion is putting up there. If you're a golf athlete, you can see what kind of scores and what kind of courses those students are playing at. So do some research. Check out, compared to other students at the university level, how competitive are you? Consult with a current coach, somebody you trust that can really give you an honest assessment of your abilities. As I've talked to some of our coaches at my university that's Division III, and I've talked to other coaches, one of the things that's really important to note is that for a sport like tennis, for example, at the D3 level, we're looking for international students that are playing at the national level in their country. So if you're a national tennis junior champion in Mexico, then a D3 or D2 school or D1 school might be an option for you, but it's not guaranteed. So we're looking for students that have a really high level of competition. Important to really kind of assess that for yourself. And again, consult with a counselor, with a coach that you can trust and help you through that process. Number 10, athletics is part of your overall university experience. And this is where I really hope you'll find some balance. And to kind of put that into kind of visual form, this is a survey that's done by the NCAA to look at the time that you spend in certain activities per week. So at Division I, you'll see students spend about 38.5 hours on academics and about 34 hours on athletics at the Division I level. At Division II, you might guess about the same amount of time in athletics. Actually, no, about 32 hours of athletics, but the same amount of time in academics. So as you notice, Division I, Division II, Division III, your level of commitment, the number of hours that you spend starts to go down a little bit, leaving you time for internships or part-time jobs or other things that you might do beyond that athletic competition. I'm going to give you 11, which is a bonus tip. Where do you go from here? I think it's important to determine how important athletics is to you in your overall college search. Assess your interest and your ability. Start to research schools. Contact admission representatives. You can contact an admission rep about athletics anytime. It's just that there are limits about when you could talk to a coach. But talk to folks like me, ask questions about what we're looking for, both in terms of academic requirements as well as athletics. And if it's the right time, we could connect you with a coach or direct you to fill out an athletic interest form from the university. And the final slide that I'll share here is a whole list of resources. Again, I can always provide a copy of these slides if you want to reach out. The NCAA, easy to remember, ncaa.org. There's some great tips for international students even. So if you look at NCAA and just search international students, you'll find a PDF guide that's there to walk you through all the steps of applying as an athlete who also is an international student. And then of course, contact information for the NAIA as well. So that is a lightning fast top 10 things you need to know about being a student athlete in the United States. Again, we could spend hours talking about this, but just to give you a little quick snapshot of the process, some of the things to think about. If you remember nothing else, I think it's important to remember that you should really assess for yourself why you want to be an athlete and how competitive are you. That's a really important kind of self-reflection that you need to do some of that work. And then you can launch into your college search and figure out how that athletic aspect will fit within your overall university search and selection process.
Right.
With
thank
that,
you
I'll
so
stop.
much,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, please.
Great information. And I just want to, there's a questions from one of the students. But before the questions, I just want to mention that this session is recorded. So if people missed some of the session, they can always jump in and see the recorded information. They can also contact you directly right now after the session. They can text you and connect with you if they have any questions. But the question that I have right now is how good do I have to be in order to get a big scholarship? So again, that's going back to say your self-assessment.
Yeah. It depends on the sport. It depends on where you're at. I think if you are performing at the national level, if you're getting national attention while you're in high school, then you may be good enough for a full scholarship. Now, that's typically in some of the more competitive or well-known sports. If you're in a team sport like American football or real football or soccer, typically those are sports that are highly competitive in the US. The full tuition, full ride scholarships are much less common, but they're still available. I worked with a family once in Brazil. The older brother was a D3 athlete on our soccer team at Cal Lutheran. The younger brother wanted to play soccer, was trying to work with a counseling agency. The parents wanted him to play soccer, and the student was really no good. But they found out he was a really good kicker. he ended up getting a scholarship to be a kicker on an American football team, kicking field goals for a Division I school in the Midwest.
Wow.
So he had to change his expectations. He was a good athlete, he just wasn't in the right sport. So there are options. I think there are some sports that students may not think about, that they may have strong competition. Maybe you're a decent soccer player, but you developed a lot of speed, and maybe you could go for something more in track and field. So there, keep your options open. There are a lot of opportunities. You can walk on many athletic teams. You may not be able to have a scholarship for that, but keep your options open. I'm not sure what a great answer that might be, but definitely have that assessment.
I also want to mention that, when we talk a big sports scholarship, so it's important to mention that the sports scholarships can go up to a full ride scholarship that include tuition, room, and board, and that comes from the athletic department. So it doesn't really come from you guys, from the admission. It comes directly from the athletic department, and it's available now. Even in Division I, there's a lot of different levels of teams. So, if someone cannot get a full ride scholarship or 80% scholarship in the top 50 teams in any sport, if you go down the list, we might be able to get a full scholarship or a bigger scholarship, in a lower division, in Division II or in NCAA. So I think there's it's a range. So if someone is good, he knows he's good, and the coaches probably know about him already. They scout him, or through connections, they kind of find out about him. But if you're like completely, on your own, but you still have the skills, I'm sure many of you ask how to start. So the first thing is, to put together like a video footage of your games and a profile with some information about where you play and stuff like that. And independently, you can contact coaches or you can contact people like that. But there's also other like scouting services, like companies that actually specialize in putting you in touch or in front of college coaches. And this is a resource that you can use. ApplyWave can help you with that stuff, and it's a lot of trial and error. So we don't decide, or no one decides if you're good or bad in your sport. The only one who decides that is the coach that actually see your information, your video footage, and your bio, resume. Look over the materials, and then you can say, "Oh, I think you're good enough for my team," or you're not good enough for my team. If you're good enough for my team, this is how much scholarship I'm willing to give you. So anyway, start by putting together like a video footage of your sport, of your game, playing, working out, and a short bio about where you played and what your skills and so forth.
Yep.
So we don't have any other questions right now, Dane.
Yeah, great.
But as I said, you guys feel free to contact Dane through this event until tomorrow. It's going to be available. And of course, if you have questions, you can always contact ApplyWave and our team, and we'll be happy to help you with any questions that you might have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dane.
Yeah. Thank you, David.